Hooked on Life, the podcast, is a division of PN Entertainment Canada, inspiring innovation through entertainment.
The opinions expressed in Hooked on Life are for conversational purposes only. This podcast may also contain language that some may find offensive. Now, on to the show.
Hey, I'm Cindy Lynn. I'm a free spirit that is headed into my 50s with abandon. I was an artist who had a midlife break when I turned 37. I left a toxic marriage and moved across the country with 2 kids, no money, and no job. I decided to start life over again on my own terms. I found sobriety, learned to like myself, to show up for my friends and family, found a home in the corporate world, fell in love with my junior high school sweetie Shay. I practiced saying yes every day and love being a badass.
And I'm Shane. Shaner, or as my wife calls me, Shay Bear. I am British, and I came close to becoming an American, but I'm Canadian. I'm a musician who got lost in the lifestyle and sobered up years ago. I got married to my girlfriend from middle school, but don't worry, we were grown-ups by then. We travel a lot, we own property far, far away, and this podcast was her idea. With all that said, welcome to Hooked on Life.
I'm really glad that you're going to take the lead today.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I'm really glad that you're going to take the lead today.
Oh, why are you glad?
Because my head is a little bit stuffy today.
Yeah, you're under the weather today.
I am a little bit under the weather.
I'm sorry to hear that. You have taken a COVID test.
Of course I have, like any good, responsible citizen.
And you are not?
No, I'm actually just suffering from a good old-fashioned head cold.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Are you sorry to hear that I don't have COVID and I'm not special, or that I have a head cold?
Yeah, I guess that's where we are right now. Yeah, well, you're special to me.
Oh, thanks, baby. You still want me to start?
Of course, as always.
Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're listening from. My name is Cindy Lynn, and I'm with my love, Shay, and we are specifically positive about you joining us today for our next episode of Hooked on Life, the podcast. Great.
Okay, great. That's that?
That's that.
Okay.
I sort of added a little something to the intro. I don't know if you can tell.
It was wonderful. I'm a little bit out of sorts because you said that you were going to give me the reins for this episode.
Yeah.
Because of what we were going to talk about.
Yeah.
And I'm a little bit out of sorts because I'm usually sitting in the passenger seat or in the back seat looking out the window.
Mm-hmm. It's a different view from the driver's seat, isn't it there, baby?
Yeah, it is.
How does it look? How does it look? Are the flowers still pretty?
Yeah, that's nice. It's very nice. This is not going to be necessarily a bright, sunny picture episode today. I think this is going to be a little bit more truth, but I think it's a truth conversation that we could have. And I promise I will keep my emotions in check because I can get pretty colored when we're talking about this topic in particular. Okay?
Well, I will try to add my color and my flair. How's that?
Okay, great. Let's start with something a little bit off key. Anybody is a Gen Xer. Anybody that's a Gen Xer that watches sports, national sports, our national sport being hockey, may remember a very famed hockey player, Eric Lindros.
I know that name even.
I think it would be wonderful that we got him on the show. Really, I think that would be fantastic.
I'll work on that.
He's a proud Canadian boy, played for Team Canada, drafted to the Quebec Nordiques, but then eventually ended up in his first year with the Flyers through a little bit of controversy. But he was a big hitter, physical player, eventually ended up with a serious round of concussions. And what I mean by round, I mean multiple rounds. Maybe I should say that. He ended up with multiple rounds of concussions. One in particular in 2000, May 26th, 2000, they were the Flyers, and of course captain and leader and very giant dude. They were playing against the New Jersey Devils, where one of his arch nemesis for the Devils, Scott Stevens, took an opportunity, and he took it. And some would argue that that was the last time that Eric Lindros was Eric Lindros.
Now, was this really the first, from my memory, this was the first really high-profile concussion case that they talked about in the NHL?
Yeah, I would say that. Up to this date, May 26th, 2000, he had been off for 40 games because of a concussion prior to this. And so in Canada, we have this elder statesman, Don Cherry, that was quoted as saying he went to the game to do this first intermission coach's corner. And on the show, he had said that he thought Lindros should sit out a little bit longer because he just doesn't seem to be himself at the beginning of the game. And, being off for 40 games, 11 weeks wasn't enough time to deal with this type of concussion that he had been dealing with. And he'd had a few before this. It was not his first. Anyway, Don Cherry's quote is that he went to the rink, to the arena in Philadelphia, and was sitting up in the rafter seats while they were practicing. And he saw Scott Stevens' wife. I think her name is Diane. And she was sitting near him up in the rafters. And Don Cherry's story is that he said to Diane, "Hey, I'm surprised as the wife of Scott Stevens that you wouldn't have better seats for the warm-up." And she said, "I drove in to the arena with my husband, and I could see in his eyes that tonight is not going to be a good night. And so I decided to sit up top, because if I sit too close, I might be really upset about it." This was long before what happened during the game. Mm-hmm. Subsequently, the play-by-play is Eric Lindros had this way of playing where he would use his physicality. He was very big, 6'4". I've met him. He's very big, 6'4", probably 220, 230, and all muscle at that time. And he went into the New Jersey zone and crossed the line on an angle where Scott Stevens, which was about 2 inches shorter, took the opportunity. And he used his shoulder and I wouldn't say his elbow, but certainly his shoulder right onto the jaw. And Lindros, in the slow motion, Lindros didn't even see him coming. There was no suspension because, first of all, it was a clean hit. It was a shoulder, not an elbow. Lindros had the puck. That meant that he was open for contact. And really, it's Lindros' job to keep his head up. Now, if we have him on the show, he may not be on the show because I just said that, but it is our responsibility to have our head up. You see where I'm going here?
I think I do.
So, anyway, what happened is I woke up this morning, ironically, and it was on my news feed on Facebook of that being in 2000, and subsequently, he never played for the Flyers again. He became, I don't want to say damaged goods, but to the Flyers, he became somewhat of a risk. And so he went around the league. He ended up in Toronto for a couple of years. He went to the New York Rangers. He went to Dallas Stars. I still thought he was a great hockey player. I didn't like him as a hockey player because he'd always come to town and beat the shit out of our players. Much like Gretzky. Gretzky was not a fighter, but Gretzky would kill you with his goals and his talent, right? So if Gretzky played for the Flames, I would have had a Flames jersey with Gretzky on the back. Gretzky helped sell the game in LA. LA really wasn't a hockey town for a long, long time until he showed up. They had a hockey team. Marcel Dion was a famous LA King. There's a lot of hockey players that came out of LA, but really, Gretzky brought hockey to LA. In any event, it was really tragic to see and now the concussions are all over the place, right? Now we're talking about it, and we're talking about head safety and football, same in NFL, CFL, they're talking about that safety. So that's very, very good, right? Anyway, got to keep our head up. We'll start with that.
You always say that to me and to the kids. Always be aware of your surroundings.
Yeah, you know it. Exactly. Speaking of surroundings, Simon sat me down, and of course you saw it too, that our statistics for this little podcast that could has finally reared its head, and it's not ugly at all. We have realized that we have a few people from our nation of Canada. Nice. That's very good. We have some people from the South, some of our American neighbors down there in the South as well. And we have a number of Cubans.
Yeah.
From Cuba. This is fucking amazing. So, hola.
Hola. Gracias. Muy gracias. Very thank you? No. Muy gracias? No.
Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias.
Yeah. Bienvenido to Hooked on Life. See? Welcome to Hooked on Life.
And maybe we need to promote ourselves when we're in Cuba here in the next couple of weeks.
I think that would be great. I think we should have a little
shout out?
Press conference. We should have a press conference in Havana while we're down there. Somebody in Havana hook us up, would you? Okay, so let's get to the meat and potatoes of this because we've been talking long enough. I have been talking long enough anyway. Our friends and followers in Cuba would not know what we're talking about. This is not an option in Cuba. Mm-hmm. If you would like to purchase something, like, say, a property in Cuba, you have to buy it cash. Or you buy it cash and you add in a car, or you add in an air conditioner, or you add in a water pump to make up for the difference. But in North America, we have been trained, and rightly so, we have been trained to take on a mortgage. A mortgage is very important when you're purchasing a large property. Are we in agreement so far?
Mm-hmm.
So the idea of a mortgage is to borrow money from a lender. It doesn't have to be at a bank. It doesn't have to be at a secondary bank. It can be to somebody, but most often it's a bank because it is a contract. Mortgages exist to create opportunities for buyers and sellers, but they mainly protect the lender by giving the lender a security interest in the borrower's home, so the interest that you're paying. If a borrower does not meet the repayment terms, the mortgage lets the lender seize and liquidate the property. So if you don't pay, you forfeit it. Currently in our nation of Canada, the Canadian Bank Association says that there are currently 4.8 million people that have a mortgage. Now, we have 38 million, and we have a lot of children, and we have a lot of older people here too, but 4.8 million doesn't sound like a lot. But the mortgage debt itself now totals over $2 trillion. The non-mortgage loans for cars, credit card debt, and so on are now just over 700 billion.
Methinks we've got a problem.
Okay, Simon, bring in the cool music. Cindy, put yourself back into the year 1754 BC. We're in Mesopotamia, middle of now what we would call Central Europe. The Sumerian worship places, like their churches at the time, started to serve as banks for the population. And this is where you would get a credit or a borrow for something that you were doing on a farm or putting something together for your home. And it was actually on a large scale for their community at that time. It was called a Hammurabi. It's actually a code, and it was introduced, which defined the price of silver and how it would regulate interest rates on silver loans and borrowing money. So far, so good, right? Fast forward to 400 BC. In Greece and in Rome, there were pawnbrokers that would take up your stuff at the very beginnings of pawnbroking, right? If you would borrow something, borrow some coins, and you would give something in return, like a cage for a chicken, and you didn't pay it, you'd lost your cage. The first loans that are actually listed in history, other than Sumeria, are in India, where it's mentioned in 200 BC. This is during the time of the Mauryan Empire. The Middle Ages, around 1400 AD, brought the largest form of authority from religion, and it also brought Christians to borrow money and lend money to others. The Christians could lend money to the Muslims and vice versa, but there was really no interest on it. It was just borrowing money. Currently, Standard & Poor's, which is in the United States, reports that the global corporate defaults now are higher since 2009. The U.S. corporate defaults are at 2.5 times the level than a year ago. The ratio of Canadian household debt has just come down this year, and it's still 181%, which means that for every dollar that you earn, you also owe $1.81. That's pretty outstanding. If we flip back to 1980, the ratio was only 66%. So we've tripled it since 1980. Where are we going? Where are we going with borrowing money? Forget rising interest rates, because that's going to be a huge problem. What are we doing borrowing so much fucking money? Much more than we could ever afford to pay off currently at 181%. This is not going to be good for the country or the GDP or anything like that.
I just need to say, before I comment on what you said, when you host the podcast, shit gets real. Like, you are so researched. You are so calculated. You have a little story that you tell. I feel like I'm going to need to up my game when I take back my director's chair.
Well, I'm a little bit nervous. I mean, you've been driving this little podcast that could for so long. I just don't know what else to do other than be overly prepared.
That's awesome.
I think borrowing money and owing money is inevitable. Now, for ourselves, we don't necessarily do that. We buy properties, cash. We save for it, of course. We buy trips on our credit card, but we pay them off after we've booked it.
But let me just interrupt you for a second. You are saying this like we have always had our financial shit together. I think those decisions came from many, many years of making the wrong decisions with money.
Yeah, it's true. Of course. I'm very curious to know your journey. You know what? Let's take a quick break. Let's get a quick break. I want to have a coffee too. I want to talk to Simon about this headphone problem I have right now.
We'll be right back.
You go ahead. Go ahead.
I start it, right? Because you're the big boss today. Ready? We will be right back with
Hooked on Life.
Nice.
Hey listener, yes you, I'm talking to you. Are you sitting there wondering how you can be a part of Hooked on Life? We are looking for corporations and people, yes people just like you, who want to help sponsor our little podcast. There's so much we can do together. If you are hooked to help, contact us right now at hookedonlifethepodcast@gmail.com and in the subject line say, I want to help. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Podbean. And we want to thank you for continuing to support Hooked on Life.
Great. We are back to our next segment of Hooked on Life. We're glad that you have come back to join us. And with that, I'm going to hand over the reins to our fearless leader, the beautiful long-haired, bearded Shay Bear.
My hair is a mess, so...
Well, it's a podcast. They don't know that.
Okay, good.
Just pretend that you are a modern-day Jesus.
We're talking about debt, mortgages, loans, money that we owe that we haven't actually earned yet. Really, the definition of a debt is the outcome of a contract between a lender and a borrower. Lending institutions will consider many factors in reviewing the loan applications and find out how much you can take on. But at 181% of your earnings, that's well above the historical rules. I don't want to say rules, but the historical patterns that we've had in the past. And just to get off track just for a second, I believe the institutions did this because the interest rates were so fucking low. There wasn't enough money for them to make their quotas. Like we are shareholders of banks in Canada, so they're not making enough money, in quote. So they need to lend out more money to make up the difference for the low interest rate. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Now, we have a bit of a rat's nest we're all dealing with, right? This is not good. You said, and I already know, but you can share with our friends here, what was your pattern with money prior to meeting me?
Well, this is going to be a little emotionally vulnerable. It's a bit embarrassing, actually, to talk about it. But it is the truth, and I think, I've definitely accepted some of the wrongs of my past. So, I would start by saying that I was raised with a good family. My parents were savers. My parents did not incur high debt when I was growing up, to my knowledge. And, I do remember them sitting at the kitchen table with their budget book every Sunday night doing the books together. So they had good financial well-being, I believe, from everything that I know. I did not take that very seriously as a young person, and I sort of felt like money grew on trees. I also was fortunate that my parents wanted me to have everything that I wanted to a certain extent. So when I did leave home to go to school and I would call them and say, I need more money for XYZ, they assisted. And so I sort of lacked that financial accountability of what do you do when you need to buy groceries and you've spent your last $20 on beer. After school was done and I was a young adult, it didn't get any better. And when I was with my first husband, he had very poor financial boundaries as well. And I will say this, I had a good job. I made good money. We were able to purchase a home, but the only way we were able to purchase a home, because we were not savers, we were constantly in debt, was we had to borrow the down payment from my parents. And at the time, I don't know if they still do these kinds of mortgages, but at the time, once you bought the house, they gave you the down payment back. I don't know if they still do that or not.
I don't know, but that sounds very dangerous.
So essentially you put no down payment on the mortgage. So it's all part of that fee
scheme.
So that is how we got into our first property. And we didn't really think about the money it took to maintain a property, fixing repairs and updating things. So when it became older, we decided, we better move again. And luckily when we did that, it was 2006, 2007. And in Calgary at that time, the housing market was on fire. And so we were able to turn over our home in less than 24 hours with competing offers above asking price. So we were very, very fortunate, and we made a lot of money. We moved into the other house. With that said, we just continued on the debt train, and I worked hard. I worked 16-hour days sometimes at a job I really loved with people I loved and was very passionate about it, and had no real understanding of what was happening in my bank accounts. And it was one day in, I think, 2008 that I was sat down by my spouse at the time and told, we have no money and people are calling us and we are so behind on our bills and we have 4 credit cards and they are all maxed out and I don't know what to do anymore. To which my answer was, I don't get it. I make good money. I make good money. But that money was being grossly overspent with thoughtlessness and carelessness. We lived in the world of, if I wanted it, I got it. If he wanted it, he got it. If we wanted to eat out 5 times a week, we ate out 5 times a week. If we wanted to go to the Stampede and blow $800 in a day, we did that. And actually, that is a funny story. That conversation led to us saying, I think we're going to need to go to, I can't remember what the company's name was, but claim bankruptcy in order to get out of this because we were in such a hole. And our answer to that was, well, then you know what? We should really treat ourselves and go and have a big blowout at the Stampede. That was the way we dealt with that financial reality. So we went bankrupt and we lost everything and lost my house at the time and had to start over. It was very, very difficult. People think bankruptcy is easy. It is not easy. And I had one son at the time who was about 4 years old and a newborn baby. And my father was quite ill in the hospital at the time. So it was very, very difficult. And it was a long road to get back to square one. Now, the fortunate part of my bankruptcy was it led me to a place where I realized that my life was out of control. And I was able to go and get help and get sober. And one of the first things I realized when I got sober is I needed to make some huge life changes. And one of those was moving to Toronto. And then you and I reconnected and I was struggling. When I moved to Toronto, I had 2 kids. I went from living in a 5-bedroom home with 2 garages and 2 cars to living in a 2-bedroom apartment with 1 bathroom and nothing. And I was living on welfare and had to budget things like how many trips on the bus we could take because I only had so much money to get through to the end of the month. Now, I will say this. My parents were very willing to bail me out. And because of my newfound sobriety, I wanted to be accountable for my life and for my children. And I wanted to finally learn how to take care of myself, even though I was almost 40 years old at the time. I was fucking mad that I was in the situation that I was in. So I decided I was going to do it on my own. And I was really trying. And I think you at the time sort of were seeing it from the outside and seeing my frustrations and my challenges because I really was overwhelmed financially, trying to figure out how to make things work. And you would repeatedly ask me, do you need help? Can I help you? Now, you didn't have 2 cents to rub together either at that point. And you would bring me meat. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I would bring you, bags of chicken legs and
pork chops.
Whatever we could do.
Because I couldn't afford to buy meat. I shopped at the dollar store. And I didn't have a lot of friends here. I didn't have family here. I didn't have a job yet. And so the best thing I ever did was one night I finally humbled myself enough to let you see my credit card statement. And it was maxed out. And I was desperately trying to manage the interest on that. And you said, can I help you? And I said yes. And that was probably the best thing I ever did. It's been the hardest decision I've ever made, but the best thing I ever did. And from that moment on, I have spent less than I have earned. I have been able to not only get out of debt, but accumulate wealth. and to learn how to live well with what I have. And money has not only become a resource, it's become something that I am very respectful of and I take very seriously. And it's been a real partnership for you and I because we really did start with less than nothing. And it's been a real testament, I think, to us becoming healthy people, and a healthy partnership is watching that situation change for us. It's not easy. Like you always say, we have to say no way more than we say yes. We have to make decisions that I think a lot of people don't understand, because a lot of people are okay to just put it on the credit card, and we don't do that. We save, we have the money, and then we buy it. So that's my story. It's a bit humbling. I feel a bit embarrassed sharing that, but I hope it's helpful to other people who think, that we just kind of have it all together. We don't. I scraped and clawed my way from the grave to get to where I've gotten to now financially. And I've learned a lot and I've sacrificed a lot, but I'm grateful for every second of it.
Great. Yeah, I'm glad. I too went bankrupt in the 90s, late 90s. I was with a girl and we bought a condo. At the time, it was only $75,000, and then we got a line of credit to furnish it, which is another $10,000. So really, it was $85,000 we were in. But eventually, we, after 2 years, we just decided that we just couldn't do this anymore. We weren't making a lot of money to begin with, but looking back, I think, oh my God, what a measly amount to go bankrupt on. Subsequently, after that, I became debt averse. So I didn't have a credit card. I just lived literally cash in hand, paying rent, paying hydro. Everything I did, I had cash or I didn't do it, which a lot of things I didn't do because I wasn't making a lot of money. But then in 2009, I got sober, and then I realized I have nothing. I better figure something out. And so before I was able to figure it out, you and I got together, and then we started talking about what we wanted to do, like our dreams. And I remember you saying to me, I don't really care where I end up. I'm going to get emotional too. I remember you saying to me, I don't know where I'm going to end up, but I don't want to end up broke anymore. And I was like, okay, fuck it. Let's do this. Let's fucking do this.
It's stressful.
Saying no is really hard to do. Clapton is coming to town, and the tickets, I know that you were saying, oh, we should go. I'd love to bring you because, you love Clapton and
50th birthday.
50th. Yeah, I'm 50 this year. I can't believe it. They're $300 a ticket on the nosebleed seats, and on the floor they're $1,500. Now, we could take everybody listening right now to the concert. We could do that right now. We have no problem doing that. But I don't want to do that because I don't think there's intrinsic value in that. Like, I want to see him for sure, but to ask for that kind of money is kind of ridiculous. To me, this is much better. We've gone from a point of, like you said, buying stuff at the dollar store and nickel and diming ourselves to try to get transit on the go and, unemployed for a long period of time, to now purchasing property, cash, which is pretty surprising. It'll be surprising to someone that knows us. It may not be surprising, or it may be surprising to people that don't know us. But I'll tell you, even though it's been blood, sweat, and tears to do it, I am still a little bit surprised myself. But this is a good way of doing things. Okay, you know what? Enough talking. Let's listen to a commercial break. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll come back with hope. We bring hope. This next segment will be nothing but hope, we promise you.
And we'll be right back with...
Hooked on Life. No, sorry, wait. No. Hooked on Life.
Oh, jeez. Okay, one more.
Hooked on Life.
Woo!
This portion of today's podcast is brought to you by Playhouse North Acting Studios. Founded by Cindy McCauley in 2004, they offer professional-level training that provides students with a competitive edge that's needed in today's industry. They provide the tools necessary to build a solid foundation, find freedom and confidence in the actor's approach to the work. Using the Meisner technique, they are committed to a positive setting for students to train and cultivate a lifelong practice through a professional approach. For more information on upcoming sessions, contact them at playhousenorthstudios@gmail.com.
And we are back, and we have subsequently wiped our tears, had a little dance party, felt a huge amount of gratitude to recovery, and Shay promises, right, Shay, that this is going to be a little bit of hope now.
I make no promises on anything. No, let's get a little bit more hopeful here.
Can I just say something really quick?
Yeah.
I just want to thank you.
For what?
For partnering with me to change my life and to having the same dream that I had. And now when I think about retirement or when I think about my life, I don't have to worry anymore. So thank you.
You have nothing to worry about anymore. Okay?
Okay. Love you. Oh my God.
I love you too.
Okay, can we please move on?
Yeah, let's do this.
The silliest episode.
These people are like, oh my God. Is this what happens in the next episode?
I think it's because I'm on the Tylenol cold medication.
Drugs. There's nothing like fucking drugs. Okay. Tylenol, cold, and flu.
Shit.
Do you want your wife to melt down in front of you on a podcast? Try Tylenol, cold, and flu. God. Okay. Listen, let's get some light seriousness going on, okay?
Okay.
Do you feel overwhelmed with your debt? If the answer is no, then fucking turn this off. Okay. Okay. Listen, there's a lot of good programs out there. There's some really great programs out there, and one is Dave Ramsey. So we're not going to get too deep into this. We're just going to share hope. We're going to share some hope and a little bit of tools. We're going to share a little bit of hope, and we're going to share some tools that have worked for us that can assist you in making your financial life better. Because at the end of the day, you need to take care of you. We need to take care of us. You need to take care of you, whatever that means for you. Living under the waterline is not acceptable. We're not frogs, we're humans. Let's live properly. Let's live intentionally, okay?
And live our best life.
Of course. We're not suggesting that we think that you should buy a property in another country. We're not suggesting that you should go and buy a company and sell it on the stock market. We're not suggesting any of that. We're just suggesting hope, okay? So get a pencil, get a pen. I don't give a shit. Do something for yourself. Listen to this again when you get home. Listen to it again in the morning or tonight, whatever you need to do. These tips are going to help you find hope, okay?
I have a tip too.
Okay.
But I can go after you.
Well, ladies first, go ahead.
And it's going to involve a shout out. My first big girl job that I got in Toronto was with a company who will remain nameless. And the CEO of that company was a great man. And I am going to shout out to him because I think he should be a guest on our show. Dave Eason.
That would be fantastic.
Shout out to Dave. And I remember he gave me a big raise. I think my second year in. Big, like significant. I can't remember the percentage amount, but it was mind-boggling. And I told you, and you said, I want you to go in there, and I want you to sit across from Dave, and I want you to ask him what would his advice be for us to do with his money. Because, of course, we had no clue. Now we had all this extra money. What were we going to do with it? And he very simply handed us a book. And he said, if you read this book and you follow these instructions, I guarantee you will be wealthy. And what was that book, dear?
Dave Chilton and The Wealthy Barber.
Now, I will say this, another shout out to my Shay Bear, because I have never read the book, but Shay read it and he told us exactly what to do, and we did.
That's typical of our marriage, really. You buy a barbecue and then I have to fucking build it.
I'm the idea man.
Yeah. You just bring shit in home and then you bring shit home and I have to put it together. So,
oh my
okay.
God.
Okay, yeah, Dave Chilton, we should have him as a guest. He's not necessarily a Gen Xer, but he would be certainly really someone that we should talk to about finance. Yeah. He's very, very good. Okay, let's get to brass tacks here. These are some tips and tools that you can use to get your shit together. Okay, let's start with this. 1. First of all, find out how much actual debt you have. Really look at it. Look at all your credit cards. Look at all your loans. Look at your mortgage. Look at your interest rate. Add it all together and add up your debt, okay? It's called a liability list. We're going to do a liability and an asset, okay? Add up all of your liabilities. I know that you're going to look at the asset list and go, well, I have a house. If you owe $500,000 on that home, it's not an asset, it's a liability. You can think of it however way you want, but until you sell it, it's still a liability. Okay, it's very important that you keep that in mind. Cars are a depreciating asset. Every time you get into a car and you put mileage on it, doesn't matter if it's a Hyundai Pony or a 74 Corvette split back window, doesn't matter. It's going to depreciate in value. Something to consider, okay? So first of all, find out all your liabilities. If you are in a liability issue, look at your liabilities. Second of all, develop a written financial plan. Now, you and I together, Cindy, we have a Excel budget program, whatever. And we look at it. We haven't looked at it in a little while. We should get back at it. We're going to preach about what you should do, which we're not preaching. We're just suggesting, right? Develop a plan on how you're going to get out of your mess and include your bills, your rent, your mortgage, your house, your food, all that shit, okay? It's very important.
And I do have one thing to add. There was a time where I owed a significant amount to the government, to the CRA, and that can be very scary if you're in that situation. My suggestion, which is what I did, is I phoned and I had a very humbling and honest conversation with the woman that was on the other end of the line and shared with her my situation and that I would like to pay down. It was a significant amount. I can't remember how much. And her response to me was, how much per month can you contribute? And I think it was only $100 or something a month. Might have even been less. And she said, okay, write those checks for this many months, send them in, and you're good to go. So they are willing to work with you, but make that initial conversation and be honest and find a plan on how to deal with those kinds of situations.
That's a great tip. Very good.
Thanks.
Okay.
2.
Get into the habit of saving money. Now, the step 3 is kind of joining with this. Step 3 is slightly attached to this, but we'll get to that number 3 in a second. Put in your budget a savings plan, an emergency fund, whatever you want to do. My wife likes to go to the salon, so in our budget, there is salon money. I don't get salon money. She gets salon money, but she wants to go to the salon. There's going to be money put aside for that.
It's actually called spa, dear. Salon sounds really 1970s.
Okay, well, I was born in the 1970s.
Oh my God.
Get into the habit of putting away a little bit of money in the bank account, into an envelope, whatever you want to do, because it's going to give you the impression, and not the impression, it's going to give you the feeling that you are actually making some serious progress. But remember, we're tackling this debt first and trying to get our shit together. This is number 3 that's attached to number 2.
3.
Live below your means. If you make $3,000 a month, then keep your bills under $3,000 a month. That's easy. What's not easy is saying, oh, I really can't afford to do that. Then don't do that, right?
Yeah, and if I can just add this from our experience, we never say we can't do that. What we say is, this is what we want, and how much time do we need to commit to saving in order to get what we want? So sometimes we save for 8 months, but we get it. We don't live without. We are just responsible in how we save for what we want.
Yeah, and you know what? We live in a society that's consumer driven, right? So you're going to go to Best Buy, you're going to go to Future Shop, fuck, what was that? You go to these other electronics.
Why not say Radio Shack?
Oh yeah, well there you go. That's a long time ago. We're going to go into an electronic shop, Apple store, and they have all these new cool shit, there's new cool contraptions and electronics and phones and TVs, and the first thing you want to do is buy it. I feel the same way. But the first question I ask myself is, do I really need this? And if I need this, what am I going to sacrifice? I'm going to have to sacrifice something next week, next month to do it, whatever that is. So I'm not necessarily a hardcore consumer, and I'm the first one to admit it.
I think I am a hardcore consumer.
Okay, there you go. Good.
I fully admit that.
So with those pieces put in place, you got a budget, you got putting a little bit of money away and you're saving it. You are being conscientious.
4.
Number 4, stay out of fucking debt. Stay out of it. Once you get yourself out of the ocean and you walk up that wet beach, and it's pretty difficult because you're soaked in water, stay out of the fucking water until you can swim again. That's all. Easy peasy, right? It's easier said than done, but when you get off the beach, stay dry. Stay out of debt. If you want to buy something, save up for it and then buy it. Save up for it. Use your credit card online. We do that all the time. Amazon, flights, travel, anything you want to do on credit card. Have the money before you do it.
5.
Number 5. This is part of this too. Be intentional. Be intentional in anything that you do. If you are going to go out and see somebody and you think, this person's a real fucking asshole, like this guy on this podcast, then don't go out and hang out with them. Don't go for lunch with them. I'm very lucky to have in-laws that have been very special to me. If they weren't nice to me, I wouldn't hang out with them. So be intentional. If you're going to go out and look at a car and you're thinking about buying a car, be intentional with it. Do you have the money? Can you afford it? Is the insurance something that you can afford? Is it practical? Am I going to buy a fucking Lamborghini? So here's something for you. I was very lucky to have my wife buy me a birthday present. No, it was a Christmas present where I was able to take around a 2011 Lamborghini Gallardo around a racetrack out just outside of the city here on a beautiful summer day. And I was able to really open it up, and it was fucking amazing. But getting out of it afterwards, I was realizing, wow, it's a $300,000 car. It's very uncomfortable to drive. I know what I like. I like a 68 Olds Cutlass 442 with a rocket in it. That's what I like. But with the old strap seatbelt over your lap, you know what I mean? That would be pretty awesome too. From my experience, a Lamborghini is not as intentional as I thought it was. What were you going to say? I'm sorry.
So what I was going to say is, with debt, we have become consumed with instant gratification. And I think that's part of this financial fitness, is really tuning ourselves in to not needing everything right now. Like, I have to. We don't have to do anything. You don't have to buy a brand new cell phone for $600. You don't have to have an iPhone. There are alternatives. And I think our parents lived a life of alternatives. I remember wanting Levi jeans when I was 15 years old. And my mother said to me, she would give me the money that she would have spent. And what were they called? GWGs? Or what was the shit jean?
Sure. Yeah.
Or fucking Zeller jeans.
Right.
That were really shit jeans and embarrassing to wear. But she would give me the money for that, and I could pay the extra for Levi's. So she was willing to buy me jeans. She was not willing to get me the Levi's. How many parents feel stuck when their child says, I need the Levi's? That, I have to get the Levi's. I have to get the iPhone. We don't have to do anything.
Very true. It's hard to tell people that nowadays. They feel like they need everything, like you said. Okay, don't worry. There's only a couple left, so if I'm boring you, you can turn it off and go to the next episode if you prefer.
Okay, listen, don't tell people to turn off the podcast.
Okay, sorry.
You're going to lose your director's chair if you keep telling people to turn off.
Okay, well, stay on. Okay, next step.
6.
You should have a little bit of savings at this point, and you should be out of debt. Find a way to invest that money. So let's say you have $1,000. You've paid off all your debt and you're saved $1,000. That's really amazing. If you don't need that $1,000, try to find a way of putting it into an account that will grow for you more than just a fucking bank account, because they're going to give you nothing. I want to tell everybody a secret, but we have one savings account that we use for emergencies. It's about 10 grand. And last month we made 11 cents on it. That's not growing, but we leave it in a bank account so then we can use it in an emergency. But if you have $10,000 or if you have $1,000, find a way of investing it. Not necessarily in BlackRock. You could do that, but there's always a minimum for those big heavies, right? You can't just go in there and buy $1,000. You can do it at a bank. You can buy stocks and bonds or mixed, but something to consider is investing your money to make it grow faster than just leaving it in the bank account.
And there's lots of options now with TD Direct, places like Wealth Simple, places like Tangerine, where you can take a relatively small amount of money and begin that process of learning how to invest it.
It's going to be a slow grow, because if you only have $1,000, and that's a lot of money right now, right? $1,000 it's not going to double in a year, but the more money you have in it, the more money it will grow. The more money you have in it, the more money it will grow. So it's a matter of trying to keep your mitts off your money, which sounds a bit crazy, but it's true.
And that's been very hard lately, hasn't it, dear?
What, for us? No.
It hasn't? As we've watched the stock market plummet, have you not had moments of thinking, dear God, I need to get this money out of here?
Well, yeah, we're living in a weird time, but every 8 to 10 years there's a bit of a weirdness going on. No, I'm saying, like, take my money out to go spend it. We don't do that.
I see, no.
The last tip, this is only a very short podcast for everybody.
7.
If you don't know what to do, if you're literally at wit's end and you don't know what to do, and you don't want to swim anymore, or you can't swim anymore, and it doesn't have to be just money, it can be addiction, it can be mental health, it can be struggles with family, it can be struggles with life. It's okay. Ask for help. There's a lot of really good professional help out there. I don't know what I would have done with my addiction had I not asked for help. I probably wouldn't have died. I was drinking in excess of 6 liters of beer every day and smoking copious amounts of marijuana every day to boot. So I was a really hot mess. Asking for help was the best thing I could have ever done for myself. So whether it be finance or health or anything like that, if you feel like you cannot get out, or if you feel trapped, or you feel like you're in trouble, or you feel like the water is rising and you're in the basement of the Titanic and you can't get the fuck out, ask for help. We can ask for someone here that can attach some connections on this podcast, and maybe we can let everybody know that there's help available wherever you're looking for, because a healthy you is a successful you. Doesn't matter what it is. But I know we talked about debt today and we talked about issues like that, but we can talk about any other topic and it'll be the same conversation, right? So yeah, it's really important that we look for ways for us ourselves to grow, because at the end of the day, as we all get older, and hopefully we all get very old, there's only going to be one person that can take care of us, and that's ourselves. Here's the thing. A strong me is a strong spouse to my wife. And then a strong me is a strong employee to my place of business. A strong me is a leader, hopefully a good leader, to my family. So let's try to figure ways of becoming stronger in our lives to improve our lives, because, until further notice, we only have one. So let's do the best that we can with what we've got. So just because you've realized that you may be in quicksand around your neck, there's ways of getting out of this. And I hope that someone can take heed. If we have all these listeners and one person changes their life for the better, then this podcast, right now, this very podcast, has done its job.
Yeah.
When I got sober and there were 50 of us in the room, and the leader stood up and said, if one person stays sober, then my efforts have been to good use. And on my 14th year of sobriety, I want to thank that fella for saying those positive words, because by God, we've done it so far and we're going to keep doing it every day. Any last thoughts, my dear?
Well, without getting emotional, I'll try not to. I'm just so grateful. When we do talk about debt, that was something that really buried me for a long time, made me feel very hopeless. Money can really overtake us. And lately, since my mom passed away, I keep thinking, if this is the dance, if this is the life, if this is our moment, is it what I want it to be? Because I've realized the only thing that gets in your way from living your best life is you. At the end of the day, it's you and our capabilities and our opportunities in life. We have so much more at our fingertips than we even realize. If you would have told me when I was 36 years old and I wanted to die, and I was 100 pounds heavier, and I was miserable, and I didn't even know how to be a good mom, my kids didn't even know me, you would have told me, just blink, and with some real hard work and some real growth and learning, you will change your life to be better than you could even imagine. I wouldn't have believed you, but it's true. But it started with 4 letters, HELP. I did not do it alone, and it was every day choosing to take the next step. And sometimes those steps were really hard, but they got easier and easier and easier. And I'm grateful. And I do hope that this podcast, because I do think debt is a huge problem with more people than are even talking about it. I hope that this gives people hope that life can get better. And I guess that's why the title of our podcast is what it is. And I guess that's why you and I do want to share through this podcast, is because we have been given the gift to change our lives, and we want to live our best lives. And so with that, I will let you lead out.
Well, sorry for the emotions, everyone. That was a little heavy today, but I think it's worthwhile talking about, like you said. So good stuff. We'd like to thank Audacity for all the assistance. We'd like to thank Simon Says in the booth. Really appreciate everything that you do. Please do yourselves a favor. Do us a favor. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And if you have any questions or comments, you can find us at hookedonlife@gmail.com.
Actually, you will find us at hookedonlifethepodcast@gmail.com. Don't worry, everybody. I will be coming back as the director next episode.
Oh, my God. Thank God for that. You have been listening to
Hooked on Life.
If you enjoyed this episode of Hooked on Life and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe to our channel. We would also love to hear from you. If you have any ideas for future Hooked on Life podcasts, feel free to drop us a line. You can stay up to date with Cindy and Shane by following them on Facebook and Instagram. And remember, don't worry about tonight's sunset, because there will always be one tomorrow. See ya!